Good morning, everybody. Good morning. In New York, there's this little feeling of spring starting, and it's such a wonderful feeling, like we're going to have a new season, maybe. And we have a new flyer, which actually you received last week, but this is the final version for March. And Christine made a lovely flyer for us. And I just want to acknowledge that it said on the flyer that Melinda isn't going to be holding the group in the same way as she had for three years, but she's going to be a participant in the group. But we now have a planning committee that helps to hold the group. And of course, Christine has been with us from the beginning, being our holder, and Dorothy is our poem reader. And so let's take a couple of breaths and just get here. I invite you to turn on your cameras, even if you don't feel all that peppy yet in the morning or in the evening, so that we can really feel like we are in a group together. And I'm so delighted to invite Stephen Adler to be with us. And Stephen, how long have we known each other? It's been a long time, right?
A long time, yeah. Wow. I had to think back. I think it must be over 20 years.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, we're not that old. We couldn't do.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we met in the playground.
I see, yes. Yeah, so Stephen has been a delight to dialogue with for all of these years. And Stephen, one of the things that I love about you is your exuberance and enthusiasm and joie de vivre, and and your way of giving examples of things. They're always very lively and wonderful. And Stephen has been building continually his institute in Brazil, ACT, right? Such a nice name. And has recently been doing other international work, like in Egypt, and very exciting work. And the thing that I most want to emphasize is that Stephen has just become a coordinator for the Institute. And so I think this is one of your first presentations as a coordinator. And
it is the very first.
Really congratulate you after many years of building your work. And so I think I'll let you finish introducing yourself, Stephen, and thank you, everybody, for welcoming Stephen with me.
Well, it's a pleasure looking at everybody, connecting. I did some thinking, how would I introduce myself? And I decided to say that I'm here with you because I assume, like all of you, we're on a journey. I started my journey 58 years ago when I decided to study psychoanalysis. It wasn't a difficult decision because that's all there was. It was Freudian analysis, and that was about it. And I was lucky enough, not realizing, being a very young student and practitioner, to study with the people that Freud had analyzed and trained. And I was with that for over 15 years. But in the process, I began to realize that in facilitating a client to move forward, it required my growth in moving forward, and something was missing in the classical analytic frame. And because I was always curious and exuberant, anything new that came along, I began to explore and study. And I was very lucky not to even know that the people I was studying with were founders. So I moved into Gestalt therapy with Laura Pearls. I worked with Marino for a number of years in psychodrama. The body therapies came into being with Paracas and other people. And eventually, Francine Shapiro and working with trauma, because, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, what we knew about trauma was really unproductive. And so I immersed myself in all of that. And I spent 28 years with Betty Alice Erickson as my friend, as a co-teacher, and, and we supervised each other. She knew more about Erickson's work than I did, and I knew more about trauma than she did. So we made a good team. And as I continued, what I found with the work of Carl Rogers, and then with Erickson, and then Eugene Genlin, I think I found what was missing, which was process. And that in all the other forms of therapy, I was taught really to be responding to the person, but not in the system with the person, not connected to the process of the change that was taking place within me and the change that could take place in the client, because I could become a catalyst for their positive change, and vice versa, that you have to become that in the interaction. And of course, then through Lynn, the reintroduction to relational psychoanalysis, because I had left the classical. And I did work for a number of years with Esther Menaker, not realizing that she was in the beginning of all of that. And the word relational is so meaningful to me, because I have found with focusing that it's all right to be me. Yes, I've had all that analysis about all the things in my past that prevented me from being me, et cetera, but that doesn't change very much. What changes is when you can go into that inner awareness, when you can begin to find the voice of your implicit inside of you. And I have found that as I found the voice of my implicit, which gave me a lot of surprising experiential information, I felt it, and the felt sense, which could lead to the felt meaning, which continued to open my life, that then I had a way of transmitting that and helping clients to use focusing. Milton Erickson's work is phenomenal, but one thing that he never did and Betty never did is they never were able to, or really concerned with explaining how they did what they did. And when I first, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Lynn, but when I first did my training and then when I reconnected to you, I realized that Genlin really has a way of letting you feel the process, and then really that's the way to help a client understand what this could mean for them in their life by experiencing it. So I initially started out to use focusing to help me explain Erickson's work, and discovered that it was a very nice marriage in terms of, because when I say focus, I mean the focused state of attention. Focusing is an inward focusing state of attention. And that was Erickson's early definition. So as I found that it was all right to be me, then that was part of the transaction I could have with my clients. And it would be all right for us to be who we were with each other. And I have a little mantra that I'll share with you that made a big change in my life. I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing I have to change. and I can be much, much more. So I do feel that part of my journey was discovering again and again and again that regardless of what I thought I was doing, I was approaching my clients as if they needed to be fixed, as if they were broken, as if something had to be I had to be responsible for the change, which never really helps a person to change because they need to access their own innate abilities. And it led me to a much fuller professional and personal life, much more relaxed in the work I do. Because I really feel that there were three things that are so important. One is to have the ability to focus. We live in a time when that's an ability we have to reestablish because we spend most of our time focused on not being who we are, doing selfies and on Facebook. And it also seems to me curiosity. I would say for me, one of the major resistances to any change is when a person isn't curious, it's really hard for them to even imagine anything could be different. And then what I call innate confidence. You know, I spent a lot of years, and I don't know, but I imagine some of you still struggle with this. I do from time to time. Am I enough? Do I have self-confidence? But the more I entered into the process of focusing, and that we are process, we are molecules in motion, interacting and changing each other, the more I moved into that, the more I realized if I trust the innate process, if I have confidence in the focusing, then all those distracting voices, could I say it right? What should I do? How should I? It all fades away because you just become in one with the process because you trust your intentions and the process will lead you where it leads you. So I guess that's my way of introducing myself.
It's wonderful to be brought into your process that way, Stephen, and going along with you in that development.
It's been nice me going along with me too, instead of analyzing it, because there's a big difference analyzing how you're proceeding in your life and being in life. And learning how to accommodate and cope with, and that you have the inner ability. It's all there, it's waiting. You have to activate it. And that's the other thing I feel so strongly about focusing in the relationship between yourself and the relationship from yourself to the client in the implicit level. You activate what's an innate process and waiting for us to use and has always been there. And that's the magic.
Mm-hmm. When you use the word focusing, you know, it can mean so many things and all related. You know, there's the practice of focusing, there's the reference to making the implicit explicit this, you know, but I'm just wondering if you could give us how you're using the word.
That's a tough question.
maybe we should save it till later and then.
No. I'll give it a shot because it's what came up instantly is what I trust. The voice in me immediately said, fostering a sense of inner awareness and dialogue within the person is focusing, because without going inner, without awareness, without that dialogue, and it's just information so that they hear it without condemning themselves or bringing in the distractions and the critical voice, but just bringing them into a climate, providing a climate, focusing polite, it's a climate. And within that climate, the person can begin to reconnect to having inner awareness and an inner dialogue, which leads them into the felt sense and the felt meaning and I feel it leads them into, I also in my training became an interfaith minister with a focus on Buddhism. And Buddhism is very the same as focusing in terms of you have to develop the ability to stay focused and then pursue and accept that inner dialogue. And it has all the information you need for becoming who you were meant to become.
Thank you. Thank you.
And would this be a good time for me to talk a little bit about how I developed the magic forest?
Sure.
Okay, and I call it the magic forest, your tropical garden or oasis, because it depends which country you're in. I don't want to be talking about an oasis, though they have them actually in Brazil. There are some small oases, but in Egypt, we talk about oasis. In Western Europe, you talk about magic forest, etc. But I began to work with very diverse populations. I worked with a lot of the indigenous Mayan groups in Guatemala during their civil war. And we were actually doing a lot of focusing because they had an awareness that I can only describe. You can't survive 30 years of civil war without awareness. The people who survived had an awareness, but they weren't looking at it to really restart their lives as the war was coming to an end. And I was there in the last few years, and then when they declared peace and so on. But what I found is that getting them to go into their bodies, since they had lived through generations of trauma, that they would often avoid that. And you have to be very careful as a white male with a Guatemalan indigenous woman suggesting going into their body. That I never worked with indigenous women without having a female translator in the room with me at all times, so there was no confusion at any point. But that, how could I get them to start having that inner dialogue and inner focus and go into the sensations and the felt sense without activating their traumatic experience of being in their body during some pretty horrendous scenes. And then the same thing happened when my wife was from India. She was Zoroastrian, but for over 20 years, we went back and forth. I know a lot about India, and I started getting a lot of Hindu clients, and especially Indians in the United States who are working for the big tech companies and very logical. They exist from here up. How do you explain focusing or have them enter into it where you can find some way of getting past the logical sensors that they have? You know, if you can't program it, if you can't electronically describe it, it doesn't exist, kind of thing. And then recently, when I was asked to introduce Erickson's work, but I also was introducing focusing in my way to Egypt, which was a Muslim society. And I can admit to all of you, I was very concerned because half the women were in full purdah, and would they have a sense of humor, and what could I say and not say, given a very different culture? And finally, I decided, you know, if I'm going to be the interaction, I have to be me. I discovered that though they live in quite a repressive environment because of the government and other processes, they have a great sense of humor and they enjoy playing. So with those three groups, the indigenous Mayan groups, they have fantastic Mayan stories. And the Hindu population, they have the ancient Vedas, which are talk about your non-conscious mind and good guys and bad guys and monsters and all sorts of things that are just part of the mythology that forms the basis for their religion. And with the Muslim groups, just being real, having them teach me, that's the interaction, boy. how I needed to be so they felt respected. And once they feel that you see them, that you hear them and you value them, they totally open up to you. And they have tons of stories too, and they love playful things. So that's what caused me to develop what I call the magic forest, an indirect way of introducing focusing that you can then build on, because I believe that real progress within myself was, okay, first is that first level of structure. And once you get that, it will support the next level and the next level and the next level. So I have Egyptian clients today where I can say, let's go inside. Let's talk to your little creature. And then we follow all the focusing procedures. I wouldn't say procedures because that sounds too rigid to me, but focusing with them on how to focus their way into what they need to look at. This is kind of a foundation that allows them to feel comfortable with it and not get stuck in the things that would keep them from moving forward and discovering what it has to offer. So that's how I set it up. But I don't know how what I'm saying is affecting people. I'd love to hear from everybody or have questions. What do you think, Lynn?
Yeah, let's open up the discussion. So your way of entering different cultures is to present a kind of story of entering into an oasis, a magic forest, and having people see what they find there.
Mm-hmm.
And you found that as a wonderful way of beginning a process. So I guess we want to see, if this is like what anybody else does to introduce focusing, or how it feels, or anything that comes up for people in relation to what you've been saying.
And I wanted to add that in that forest is a special, wonderful, unique to you little individual creature that knows everything that happened to you since conception. And it used to tell you about that until something in you started condemning it, started criticizing it, and it had to go deeper and deeper into the forest until it stopped speaking to you at all. And so on. I don't want to give away the whole story.
Okay, so we're going to see what people are sitting with, thinking, curious about.
I would like to share. I just got so excited because right now I'm creating community and doing project for people living in China. That's where I came from, and I initially set up to do meditation, to teach meditation techniques, because I believe it really helps. Then as I interact with the group more and more, I realize I need to bring focusing there somehow, but I don't know how exactly. And what you just said, just like open up so much possibility and the excitement for that, especially the last group, the Muslim group, you mentioned that. Because in a way, I have been here for like more than 10 years. I felt like I really don't know what's going on. Like the sensitivity you mentioned, that how you skillfully and playfully bring that and have the attitude of learning from them, just like dissolve a big block in my heart. Yeah, so I'm very excited. Yeah.
With working with community, that I often use this trance with 20 people at the same time. And then they can interact with each other and have conversations with each other, especially with the Muslim community, because now I know, and I have 4 or 5 Muslim clients, and I know the Egyptian culture better. I'm immersing myself more and more to learn. But then by watching their interaction, I learned how they're relating, and it actually discovered they're just like us. We just think they're very different.
Thank you. I just feel so much gratitude and excitement to dive into it to learn more. Thank you.
Olivia, I'm remembering when you were so excited at the beginning about focusing, and you had a dinner party to introduce focusing to your friends, and you did a little attunement, asking them to find the felt sense. And I don't remember the words you used for that, but then you asked them how they found it, and each person found it a different way, like an image or like a sensation or like a concept. And it was very, very moving to me to see how you did that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn, I want to follow that up. And you'll see in the Magic Forest, I include all those possibilities. Not to say do it this way, this way, this way.
Right.
But I don't know, you will know how it will come to you, which, but they've had a suggestion of all the ways the messages can come.
Right, right, right.
Would you say the mantra again? I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing
Oh.
to fix.
Yeah, I start out with the feeling there's nothing broken, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to change.
Okay,
And I
that's
can
the
be
piece
much,
I
much
didn't get.
more.
There's nothing
Yeah.
to change. Thank you.
Yeah, and sometimes when you have a difficult client who isn't quite convinced that there's nothing wrong, you can say there's nothing with feeling, there's nothing wrong with feeling, there's nothing wrong.
Yes. It's kind of reminding me of the thing that I like to use, and nothing has to happen.
Ah, that's a wonderful thing to add. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that leaves such spaciousness for something to happen. Because when I'm not
Yes.
thinking of something that has to happen, I have room.
Right.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You said several times, Stephen, that at some point I felt it was okay to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a process around that. And so when you said that, I was just very curious about you, and you named, you explicated that a little bit, but I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about what that was all about. It sounds like there was a process around arriving to feel okay to be you. And also, I'm wondering how that is related to developing the Magic Forest process.
Oh,
If it
great
was.
question. And Lynn, you have a great group here.
Oh, it's not me. Stephen, this is a fabulous group, and
Yeah.
it's been developing for 3 years. So, yes.
And what I can say is that is in a process, yeah, most of my life. Learning it's all right to be me. But what I can really say is I have found universally when a person feels heard, when they feel that they're seen, when they feel that they're valued, whether you agree with them or not, when those three things are there and you really are embodying that they suddenly have breathing space, and the critical voices and the past experiences and worrying about what will people think fades away, because it's such a unique experience for somebody to really feel that you're traveling with them, that you're as affected by the process going on in both of you as they are. I always say to a client when they come in, oh, it's nice to meet you. I wonder why we were put together. What are we supposed to learn from each other? I'm so curious. So I try to establish the truth for me in the very beginning is I've never had a client that wasn't there to teach me something, and I didn't learn something very important. It's a little shaky once in a while when you see a client resolving something you haven't quite resolved yet. But I found over time, part of that is to say, hey, maybe you could give me some tips. I'm still working on that. Very good, because you always want to be empowering the person too. I always feel that when a session is over, and that's with individual or group or community, and they feel empowered more, and I feel humble, I know I've been in process. I know I've done my job. And when people experience that, when you live what you believe, they start believing it, maybe they can do that too.
The other stuff is about when a person feels heard, seen. It's like what Gene talks about when he says when the client sees someone behind the eyes, you know, that there's really that you just have to be there. So it reminds me of that. And I really like what you say about, I wonder why we've been put together. I wonder what we have to learn from each other. That's
And what I
that
can
goes-
reinforce
Go
for
ahead.
you is that we know from polyvagal theory, and I started working with trauma when I was working with a group in Mexico, and they were all highly traumatized, and everything I did didn't work, and I was training them, but of course the trauma came out. So I started learning about trauma, going anywhere anybody was doing anything effective and learning from them. But we know when you make contact with this, I'll take my glasses off for a second, with this part, with your eyes, that's engagement. When the person feels you're really seeing them and they can see you, that the polyvagal system automatically says, I'm safe. I can trust this environment. And when a person feels a level of safety and trust, everything's possible. I find that in groups. So when I run a 2 or 3 or 4 day training, the first day, I have to find a way for that group to feel safe, for everybody in that group to express whoever they are. And everybody in that group will be their best self and their worst self during that process. And we have to make room for that. And when people feel that connection that way, especially with behind the eyes, they go much further because they are in a secure position. They're feeling they're in the room with another human being and they're safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly. And I don't know if Rosa wanted to speak as well. Rosa, do you want to?
I can go after you, Alistair.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so when you talk about like there's nothing wrong with us, there's nothing needs to change. What about times that we've hurt other people? And what about growth? I mean, could it just be I want to improve some skill or capacity?
Great question. The statement isn't, it sounds linear, but it's not. In other words, once I'm relieved from feeling I'm broken, and that's, or the therapist is going to fix me, or I have to fix me, that, I'm lovable, okay, just the way I am, that I'm accepted in that room just the way I am, and I can be much, much more. It's providing a relational field in which the client then can begin to access their own abilities to resolve and heal things. They grow much better with that idea. I can say to myself, before I found the mantra, it took me long enough to find it, but when I did find it, is, I'm angry at somebody who's annoying me. And there are many ways I can look at that. But in order to really experience what's happening, if I say, there's nothing broken, nothing I have to fix, nothing I have to change, nothing I have to do, suddenly I have a vista and can see what's happening within me and without analyzing it in the other person. And I have a very different response to that person who's annoying me. that there's an openness to where they are, because I've stepped out of the confines of how can they do this? What do I have to do for them? What do I have to do in me? So I'm not broken is a big step for any of us to take, because we get that message from a lot of places in our life. And there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to change, there's nothing I have to do, but I can choose. And this is the important word. Thanks for asking the question. It just occurred to me, but I have choice to become more. How do I do that? Now I'm curious. Now I'm more inclined to go with the focusing process. Because how can I do that? One avenue, there are many, focusing. Does that help?
Yeah. And what about saying that maybe there's a core self which is not broken and which doesn't need to change? Or do you want to say that all of me?
I would say, and I'm just giving you my opinion. I guess that's the only thing I can give anyway. So I wouldn't use core self. Yes, I can refer to it in writing and so on. It's too intellectual for me. When I say to a client, this is my experience of it, your core self, I activate all sorts of linear thinking. When I say the us in this, the I, the me, the you, there's nothing we have to fix. And we can be curious about how we can become more. It doesn't bring online those things that can interfere with us accessing our inner ability to track with our implicit and get the next step in our life.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I want to share that where I went with that, and I love this dialogue here, is that if I say to myself, Lynn, you're really okay. You're really wonderful just as you are. And you're a special ingredient in the universe. And you don't have to change yourself in order to be that special ingredient that you are of the whole. And that special ingredient is going to be problematic for some people or for everyone times, right? It's not like everybody is going to love me all the time and that I'm only going to be something positive for them. And that's okay. I can be interested in how my way of being can be a problem for somebody. I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too whatever. And I don't have to take that on as a terrible emergency where I have to scramble to be different. I can enjoy knowing how I'm a problem for someone or some people or in this moment, and be interested in that problem that we are together.
I love what you said, Lynn, because I have an adopted Mexican street kid as a son, and when he came to me when he was 15. When he was about 19 or 20, he said to me, "Dad, we have a problem." I said, "We do?" He said, "Yes." He said, "When my friends come over, you talk to them and so on. They love seeing you, but you embarrass me." Said, "Oh, okay." And then I said, and then I said to him, "Well, and the problem I have is that you frustrate me." So he said, "Well, what are we going to do to resolve this, Dad?" I said, "Well, I think that you're doing a fantastic job at frustrating me. And at your age, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And at my age and being your dad, that I'm an embarrassment to you is totally appropriate. So I think we should just hang out with it and we'll grow out of it." And he rolled his eyes and walked out of the room. But he had to think about it. Not think here, but here. And slowly we both changed.
So
Yes.
um, I just want to say that I am so happy that somebody, I don't know if it was Dorothy, asked the question about this mantra, because when you first said it, I just felt like it went by so quickly. And I was also wanting to say, oh, it feels so important and so key. And then a little while ago, you were saying something about if we can do these three things. And I was just so reminded of Carl Rogers, who I never had the honor of meeting. And since you were mentioning being with all these founders, I just wanted to kind of bring his name up because I'm a deep fan of his work. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
And if you have anything about him or your connection with him that you would like to share, I would love to hear it.
You know, I was studying so many different things and with so many different people that I wasn't focused on Rogers except through his writing. But of course, you can't spend time with Lynn or many of the early focuses or with Eugene's work without knowing Rogers in a different way than his writings, because I think, as far as I can tell, he was one of the first people to really talk about where a process, where one human essence meeting another human essence. And that was missing in so many of the other trainings. And I wanted to give everybody a short vignette. 3 years ago, I moved to Sao Paulo, Brazil, full-time, to continue the work of the Institute and give people backup after they were involved in training, because then they have questions. And if you fly in and out, you're not here to answer, and to help sponsor the next generation of teachers. But I had lived in New York City for 50 years. I made long lists. I looked at my core fears and core competencies, let's say. Should I leave after 50 years and move to a different, et cetera? And one day when I was sitting in my apartment trying to make up my mind, I said, well, you know what I'm not using? Focusing. So I just said, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing I have to fix. There's nothing I have to change. Nothing's broken, but what's my next step? I must have been quiet for about 15 minutes. And it came to me in a sort of a MGM Charlton Heston voice. Said to me, your time in New York is over. That's all I heard. I remember opening my eyes. My whole being came into a state of rest and relaxation. I picked up the phone. I called Eduardo here in Brazil. I said, I'm coming. He said, oh, in how many months? I said, 3 weeks. Because if I don't do it now, I know there's going to be interference from something in me. I called a friend in London and said, will you come over and help me pack, sell? And she came over, and 3 weeks later, I was here. And the power of that moment, when it was a felt sense and a felt meaning, the meaning of my time is over, tremendous gratitude and appreciation for everything I had received in New York. And I knew I would be taking all of that with me on this new adventure, which was open to what I wanted to develop and who I was in the process of becoming. And so here I am. And that's the power of focusing. I threw my list away, I packed up, sold 70%, brought the important things with me. And I'm very happy to be with you, and I'm very happy to be in Brazil. So let's make ourselves comfortable. And you may want to close your eyes or not. And just breathe comfortably, whatever that means to you. And notice where you're sitting, how you're being supported. Perhaps your feet are on the floor. Whatever feels right for you. And as you breathe in and out, isn't it nice to know that each one of us is wonderfully and totally unique? Now, we were conceived, or even before our conception, we were conceived in each one of us, me, you, us, received a gift, our own special internal magical gift of a magical forest. You know, it's magic because it's a forest that contains every single second of your life on every level, knowingly and unknowingly. A record of everything on so many levels. That's right. That ever happened to you. Everything in this life, and some say in other lives, I don't know, but you will know. All of this, plus much more, makes up our magical forest. In this wonderful, fantastic, mystical, and beautiful forest lives your own very special little creature. Your creature has access to every single second. Your creature has access to every event you've ever lived. Access to every molecule that is you and becoming you. Access without something being wrong, something being good, something being bad. It is the guardian of the universe of information that is uniquely you. Past, present, and future. Your creature, your wise self, your inner wisdom, your higher self knows all that needs to be known by you. You know, your little creature used to venture to the edge of the magic forest and beyond. But over the years, your conscious mind has intimidated it. Your conscious mind has judged it, criticized it, threatened it, humiliated it, made fun of it, disempowered it. Your little creature sought refuge deep within the protection of the forest, protecting itself in your magic forest. Over time, the little creature stopped venturing to the edge of the forest and stopped trying to tell you your next step in your life. It has nested deep within your magical forest. However, now is the time, and the time has come. Now is the time for you to, with kind appreciation, invite it, welcome it, protect it. You simply have to promise, but it is a pinky promise. It's a pinky promise that you will stand by it in any attempts of your mind to drive it away. Now is the time to promise it that you accept whatever it chooses you to tell you as just information. Even if you don't like what it reveals to you or like what it says, you welcome what it says with gratitude. It's just sharing information. As we sit so quietly after asking it, what's the next thing I need to know? What's the next step forward waiting for me in my life? And just wait at the edge of the forest with total acceptance. What it will bring to you as it steps beyond the edge of the magical forest is what it knows you need to know now, at this moment, as you ask that question in your life. It may take a little time as your creature must newly formulate whatever you need to know or the next step you need to take. What it offers does not come immediately. What might come immediately comes from your conscious mind. But your little creature, your special little creature, is bringing together all its wisdom and preparing to let you know what you need to know as your next step. But what you might need to know may come in a sentence. It might come in a word, in a sensation, a feeling, or an image. Somehow you will know it as it seems new and fresh and newly formed. It will feel new and different from your usual thoughts or the usual way you've looked at things. Let us sit quietly at the edge of the clearing, waiting with appreciation and patience and curiosity for a little creature to come to the edge of the forest and beyond. Tell us what's our next step. What it offers is a felt sense or a felt meaning, the information coming from the deepest part of your inner wisdom, from the center of your sacred core. Let us be open as you wait with a little creature to speak with you and present your next step.
So what would you like to share? It's always that moment of making a transition from the small group to the larger group and bringing that felt sense over that threshold from one context to another.
I'd like to share how much the words, Stephen, when you talked about taking your whole self with you, your little creature inside, every year, every moment, every second of your life, like to take it with you. There's something so freeing about that. It's so fresh for me that, and it helps. I put that together with the whole idea of what you said about I'm not broken or we're not broken. Because it's like I'm always looking for these little pieces that, oh, this piece and this piece and this piece and this. And then there's just so much you said. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. The core self, and how I'm always looking for the core self. And if I get in touch with the core self, I'll be free. And that's in my head, that's a heady concept, which I hang out in a lot. The whole idea of like connecting to the body is, every time it's said to me, I said, what are you talking about? Connect with the body. So like, I just appreciate all of the pieces that you shared today for this forest. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback. Thank you so much, Dorothy, on what Dorothy said, because what came up for me as you were speaking this mantra was it really releases that shame that holds me back. And it says, everything's okay, it's okay. And then once the shame is such a barrier to so much, and without it, then things can move. And I shared in my group something that really changed my life many, many years ago, which was just this phrase: the quickest way to make a change is to accept things exactly as they are.
Mm.
And that sentence changed my life. Yeah.
Love that.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Well, no one's sharing yet. I will just do a quick share. I just love that image of this little creature. It brings me such a light attitude. I think sometimes when I go to that realm of like more mysterious sacredness, sometimes carries some kind of heaviness, and like I need to take this message seriously. Then like what I do if I hear it. But this one just receiving the information, and the little creature for me is such a adoring kind of relationship I naturally have. I love animals, so it really helped bring a whole sense of like curiosity and playfulness, and not expecting this little thing to say anything or I have to do anything. just like my group was helpful too, sharing that innocent. It's like a childlike innocent, just waiting at the edge of the forest for the treasure to come. It's such a beautiful image. So thank you.
And I want to briefly share with everybody what I received in addition to being with all of you, is that Jim suggested what a wonderful idea for a children's book, that a parent could read a child, The Magic Forest, and the parent and the child would be moving into focusing through a children's book, which my felt sense was, yes, and let's go for it. And I can feel the wheels turning because, and I can hear from some of your responses, yes, this is a way of people finding how to have that dialogue that really helps them move through their life in more positive ways.
You know, Stephen, I love this idea of the children's book, and I was sharing in my group that right before this meeting, I had a phone call with my son, who is he's not a child anymore. He's 38 years old, but he was going through a very difficult situation. And we all know how moms cannot be therapists for their sons, but we can help them be in touch with that, that more in them, and from that more be in touch with that creature who knows. And I'm using your words here. These are not the words that I used with my son, but it was like when we know this, that inviting somebody to just know that it's not the overwhelming sensation, but we can be in touch with and accompany that and be curious with, and that makes it so alleviating. And I'm going to use Olivia's words, it's kind of playful also, because there's not this heaviness is taken away from this intense emotion or feeling that can be felt when we are not in touch with that higher self or bigger self or whatever, and then be in a dialogue with that other thing and get curious about that, and that makes it so different. So my son was so alleviated, and then I felt, oh, I can do this with my son, even though I'm not his therapist. So this is wonderful and I love this, the Magic Forest image, Stephen. So thank you for bringing that. Thank you very much.
Hi, Stephen. Like the Brady Bunch. I just get a sense or an understanding of that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, always, just now. So it's always now, and it's like I find it difficult to have an identity to which to respond to, because there's so much, which often just makes me confused. So I just loved so much of what I brought away today. Going in and hearing the voice, you, Stephen, that it can be that fast once we're serious, once we take ourselves seriously. What do I want to do? What's the next step? And who knows where it'll lead now that it becomes, I loved Lynn's, I can enjoy being a problem for some people. I can get curious about that. I just love that. And I just wanted to honor Melinda for the work she's done. So
yes.
So thank you. And I'm looking forward to Jim's new book, The Forest. So grateful. Thank you very much. And thank you, Stephen. And lots of love to Brazil from Ireland.
That sounds like a wonderful last comment. And we have our closing poem from Dorothy. And Stephen, you also had a little poem to end with also. So maybe we can have yours first and then we'll have
Great.
Dorothy's closing poem. Thank you so much, Stephen. We so appreciate it.
I have received so much, so I thank all of you. This is a prayer or a little poem I often use for myself. Oh God, help me to believe the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is.
Mm. Wow.
Help me to believe the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is.
Mm. Yes. Taking that in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dorothy.
This poem today is to honor all the idea of multiple cultures as Stephen has presented to us, and also a celebration of Melinda for her kindness and her generosity to all of us. It's called Kindness. It's by Aracelis Germay. She's of Eritrea origin, and she teaches poetry at Hampshire College. Kindness. At the Detroit Metro Airport, with the turtle hours to spare between now and my flight, there is such a thing as the kindness of the conveyor belt who lends me its slow, strange mollusk foot as I stand quiet, exhausted, having been alone in my bed for days now, sleeping in hotels, having spent months now without seeing the faces of my family. Somehow its slow and quiet carrying of the load reminds me of the kindness of donkeys. Kindness returns me to myself. It reminds me of the kindness of other things I love, like the kindness of sisters who send mail wherever you are. And speaking of mail, there is the special kindness of the mail lady who says, "Hi, baby," to everyone at first. I thought it was just to me. Hi, baby, to everyone. At first, I thought it was just to me. But now I know she says, "Hi, baby," to everyone. That is kindness. 2, there is the kindness of windows and of dogs. And then there was the extraordinary Sunday. Back at the house, I heard a woman screaming about how she was lonely, and so lonely she didn't know what she'd do. Maybe kill herself, she said, over and over like a parrot in a cage. A parrot whose human parent only taught it that one sentence. I looked out the window and saw her from behind, the way she flung her arms like she was desperate and being killed or eaten by an invisible predator like a tiger or a lion in the chest, something. And her voice seemed fogged out with methadone, I don't know, something. And I walked away from the window and sat angry with her for screaming and sad. And not long after, I heard her saying, "What'd you say? What'd you say to me?" And a man's voice, low, I could not tell if it was kind. And she said, "I'll kill myself. I'm so lonely. And did I tell you yet that it was Mother's Day? Flowers and mothers all day long." And the woman saying, "I'm so lonely I could kill myself," and then quiet. And the man's voice saying, "It's okay. It's okay." I love you. It's okay. And this made me get up. And this made me get up, put my face again to the window to see my landlord's nephew outside, just hugging her so, as if it were his mother. I mean, as if he belonged to her. And then again, quiet. I left the window, but sat in the silence of the house, hidden by shutters, and was amazed when the front door of the brownstone opened up and let the tall nephew in with his sad and cougar eyes, handsome and tall in his Carolina Brooklyn swagger. I heard him start to climb the stairs above me, and my own hand opened up my own front door. And though it was none of my business, I asked him, "Do you know that woman out there? And do you know what happened next?" He said, "No." The nephew said, "No, he didn't know. He didn't know the woman out there." And he told me Happy Mother's Day as he climbed the rest of the stairs. And I can't stop seeing them hugging on the street, under trees. It was spring but cold. And sometimes in the memory, his head is touching hers. And sometimes in the memory, his eyes are closed. And sometimes in the memory, she is holding him and singing to him, "I love you. It's okay." I mean to tell you that everywhere I go, I hear us singing to each other. This way, I mean to tell you that I have witnessed such great kindness as this. In this, my true life, you must believe me. I mean, on a Sunday when nobody was supposed to be watching, but not a secret either, public as the street, not for glory, not for a joke. The landlord's nephew ready to stand there for the woman, like a brother or a sister or a husband or a son, or none of those at all, but a stranger who, like her, is an earthling. Perhaps this thing I'm calling kindness is more simple than kindness, rather recognition of the neighbor and the blue shared earth and the common circumstances of being here. What remains living of the last 2 million impossible years?
Wow. Thank you very much, Dorothy. And I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye now.